We're going to look at some of the characteristics of JavaScript as a programming language. A quick heads up, some of what I cover here might not fully make sense yet. That's fine. This is a big picture overview, and for completeness, I've included it here in this section. I will be going into detail on all of these topics in the lectures to come. So let's first look at the fact that JavaScript is a multi-paradigm programming language. It doesn't force you into one style of programming. You can write procedural code, object-oriented code, functional code, and even other paradigms. Let's take a look at some of the examples of this. So here in this first example, what you're looking at is that I have an array and I call the function sum, passing this array to it, and this calculates the total of the values in this array, and then I'm printing it out here. So if you look at the implementation of this function, it follows a structured programming. I declare a variable, there's a for loop to control the flow of the program, and then I return the total value. This must feel familiar to you if you're coming from programming languages like Java, C++, even Python. Usually in the first course, Introduction to Programming, you learn to write code like this. Now, here's another example that maybe is still in your first programming language, or maybe in the second course that you learn more about programming. You get to write object-oriented programming. So here I have a rectangle class. It has a constructor. It has a method. It has fields, attributes, width, and height. And what I do is that I instantiate rectangle with a new keyword, and then I call the area method, the operation on the object rectangle, and it returns the area of this rectangle. So this syntax again should be familiar to you if you have done object-oriented programming in other programming languages that are commonly taught to students in their first or second programming course. A side note about this is that this is a more recent addition to JavaScript. JavaScript did not have the class keyword, and if you look at some of the resources, they may mention that JavaScript is a prototype-based programming language, or they may say that you can write object-oriented programming, but actually, or it's not a class-based OOP, it's a prototype-based OOP. At this point, this is irrelevant to us. We have a syntax that is familiar to other programming languages that implement object orientation. But under the hood, the way JavaScript deals with this thing is a little bit different. And when we get to the chapter on object-oriented programming, I'll speak more to this. Here's another example. Let me show you this side by side with the first example. So let me hide the code here and take a look at these two code. So what I'm doing here is that I have a function called sum, and then I pass an array to it, and it calculates the total and it returns it to me. Here, the code does exactly the same thing. So if I run this code, it says the total is 15. But it goes about doing that in a fairly different way. So you can see that the array itself has an operation built into it called reduce. This is not something that I created. It comes with JavaScript. Arrays, in fact, have a lot of different operations built into them that facilitate declarative and functional programming. We're going to look at some of these things in a chapter dedicated to that. And I'm not going to explain how reduce works at this point, but I want to bring your attention to this part of the code. So if you pay close attention here, reduce is actually a function. It takes two arguments. One of them is just a number. This number 0 serves the same purpose as this initialization of total to 0 in the earlier code snippet. The other part, this syntax might be completely new to you. That little bit of a snippet is a function on its own right. This is called arrow function. So this part of it are the parameters, and this is the return statement of this function. Without going too much into the syntax that we are using, the point that I want to make is that I am passing one function as a parameter to another function. And so this is to say that in JavaScript, functions are first-class citizens. They are like any other values. That means that you can store them in variables, you can pass them to other functions, you can return them from function, you can declare them inside another function. And that creates opportunity for a lot of interesting ways of writing your code, and especially if you want to write your code in a functional style. Okay, let's talk about, I already talked about the prototype-based JavaScript OOP model, but let's talk about something else which is interesting about JavaScript, and it is different from languages like Java or C++. So if you're coming from Java or C++, you know that when you declare a variable, you also specify its data type. For example, if I want to declare a variable x and store something like 42 in it, then in Java, you would go and write int x, and int means that it is an integer. It stores a whole number. In JavaScript, and if you're coming or if you have experience with Python, Python is like this too. In these languages, you don't need to declare or specify what is the data type of the data that is stored in that variable. Newer version of Python allow you to do that optionally. But anyways, in JavaScript itself, you don't really declare types. So it still figures out the type of the value that is stored in a variable. For example, JavaScript has a type of operator. If I run this snippet, you see that it prints out x, value 42, and it also knows that the type of the data stored in it is number. Now, what's more interesting is that JavaScript is also weakly typed, which means that you can go and store a value of a completely different type in the same variable. So here I'm storing in a string, and here I'm storing an array in the same variable. So on one hand, this perhaps makes writing the program a little simpler. You don't have to worry about types, but in most cases, this leads to unexpected behavior or issues down the road. One of those things is that JavaScript, and especially in JavaScript, this is more the case, is that JavaScript will convert types implicitly, and this is the technical term for it is type coercion or implicit type coercion. So funny things can happen when JavaScript goes about doing that. I'm going to give you two quick examples, and these will come up later in future lessons as well. So if I go and try to add the number 3 and the string 5, the result is going to be a string 53 because JavaScript will convert the number 3 to the string 3 and then concatenate them. On the other hand, if I go and try to subtract number 3 from a string 5, the result is going to be number 2 because JavaScript will convert the string 5 to number 5 and then perform arithmetic operation. So just to say that this is strange, and we'll talk about this more, but the point is, like, the JavaScript is not going to complain, it's not going to stop you, it's just going to convert things, and occasionally the way it does that is surprising. Here's another example of implicit type coercion. If you go and say, is a string 5 equal to the number 5, and this is the familiar double equal sign, which is the equality operator in languages like Java or C++, and the answer to that is going to be true, which might be surprising, but what happens is that it converts both of them to the same type and then it compares them, and that's why they come up as being the same. So in JavaScript, if you don't want this to happen, you need to use what is called a strict equality, which is 3 equal signs. Then it's not going to do the type conversion or type coercion for you. Here's another thing about JavaScript. So JavaScript is a garbage collected programming language, which means that you don't need to worry about managing the memory. If you're coming from C, C++, that's something that you've learned. You need to create memory, you need to free memory. If you're coming from Java or Python, then it's the same. Those languages are also garbage collected. And so when you work with like arrays or objects, you don't have to worry about freeing memory. The program will automatically under the hood take care of this for you. And it does it through a process called garbage collection. All right, so there are many other things that we can talk about when it comes to the features of JavaScript, but I just wanted to give you a quick taste of some of the features that in some cases you may find them familiar to things that you've learned before, and in other cases they may be very different from how you used to program. We're going to be covering various aspects of JavaScript in the lectures to come, so we will be revisiting these topics again and again.